What if we told you that if the United States disappeared overnight, countries like Canada, China, and Germany might fall into economic chaos, political instability, and even war? Sounds crazy, right? Well, buckle up. Because today we're diving headfirst into the deep end of global codependency, and trust me, the water is murkier than a politician's promise. This isn't just some academic exercise, this is about the very real, often unspoken pillars holding up the modern world, and spoiler alert, a lot of those pillars have "Made in the USA" stamped on them, whether they like it or not. Welcome back to Voyage Pulse, your channel for the shocking truths behind global headlines, the kind of truths that make other channels nervously check their ad revenue. Today, we reveal a list that's bound to spark debate, ignite comment sections, and maybe even cause a few diplomatic headaches. We're not here to make friends, we're here to peel back the veneer of international relations and show you the complex, often uncomfortable machinery whirring just beneath the surface. These are the 12 countries that, despite their proud pronouncements of sovereignty, simply can't survive without the United States. Yes, you heard that correctly. We're talking about nations you might assume are entirely self-sufficient, global powerhouses in their own right, some of whom even publicly criticize American influence. And yet, as we're about to demonstrate, their stability, their prosperity, and in some cases their very existence, are inextricably linked to the continued presence and power of the US. It's a tangled web of economic reliance, military protection, and geopolitical maneuvering. So before we dive into this global chaos, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button in the corner, ding the little bell icon, because what we're about to expose might just change how you see the world, and you won't want to miss a single uncomfortable revelation. Alright, let's kick things off with a country so polite, so unassuming, you'd think their national animal was a beaver apologizing for damming a stream. Canada. Yes, Canada. Our neighbor to the north, bless their cotton socks and their suspiciously affordable healthcare. They project this image of serene independence like a lumberjack gently explaining the benefits of poutine while simultaneously wrestling a moose into a canoe. It's all very charming, very Canadian. But, and this is a but so large it could annex Prince Edward Island, is that image of rugged self-reliance entirely accurate? Or is there something a little more codependent lurking beneath that charmingly knitted toque? We think it's time to pull back the maple-scented curtain on the Great White North's not-so-great secret fragility. Now let's talk money, or loonies and toonies if you're feeling particularly folksy. A truly staggering figure, one that should make every Canadian spontaneously say sorry to their wallet. Is this over 75%? Yes, that's 3/4. Or, for our American viewers, a supermajority plus one of Canada's entire export market is us, the good old US of A. Think about that for a moment. From the very oil that fuels their, and let's be honest, our SUVs, the lumber that builds their and our increasingly expensive homes, to the shiny new vehicles rolling off their assembly lines and the sophisticated tech services their very smart people develop, it's all overwhelmingly pointed south, like a compass with a serious crush. Their economic engine isn't just to American demand, it's practically got a US flag tattooed on its manifold, humming "Born in the USA" every time it starts up. And the dependency doesn't stop at what they sell us. Oh no, that would be too simple. It's also about who's investing in their future, who's providing the capital that keeps their industries humming and their citizens employed in jobs that aren't just professional apology writer. Guess who their top investor is? Go on, have a wild guess. If you said anyone other than Uncle Sam, perhaps a consortium of wealthy moose, you'd be spectacularly, hilariously wrong. We are, by a country mile, their biggest financial backer. This isn't just a friendly trade relationship, it's the bedrock of their entire modern economy. Remove the US as their primary customer and chief investor, and Canada isn't just facing a mild recession. They're looking at an economic identity crisis so profound it would make even a stoic Mountie shed a single, perfectly formed tear into his Stetson. The ensuing panic would make the great maple syrup heist look like a minor misunderstanding. But what about keeping the bad guys out, eh? Surely plucky Canada, with its vast wilderness and its even vaster politeness, can defend itself? Well, not entirely, and that's putting it charitably. When it comes to national security, Canada is comfortably, perhaps a little too comfortably, nestled under the vast, technologically superior, and frankly rather expensive US security umbrella. Through crucial alliances like NORAD, that's the North American Aerospace Defense Command, where we jointly watch the skies for incoming unpleasantness, mostly from people who don't appreciate freedom or decent coffee and NATO, Canada effectively outsources a significant chunk of its defense budget and capabilities. Let's be brutally honest. If, heaven forbid, Canada were to face a serious military threat, whose boots would be on the ground faster than you can say double-double? Ours. Without the US as its ultimate protector, Canada's vast, sparsely populated territory suddenly looks a lot more vulnerable, a lot more invitable. So much for true north, strong and free, and entirely self-reliant, eh? Next up, let's journey across the Pacific to the land of the rising sun, Japan, a country synonymous with technological marvels, bullet trains that are embarrassingly punctual, and a culture so rich it makes our attempts at fusion cuisine look like a cry for help. Yes, Japan is wealthy. Yes, it's a global leader in innovation, churning out everything from life-changing robotics to video games that will happily consume your entire weekend. But beneath this veneer of futuristic efficiency and economic might lies a rather inconvenient truth, especially when it comes to playing with the big military toys. And that truth is, without America, Japan's defense posture looks less like a samurai, and more like a very polite kitten facing a Doberman. You see, there's this little thing called Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution. It's a fascinating piece of post-World War II literature. Essentially a legally binding, "we're really sorry, and we promise not to do that again" note. It severely restricts Japan from having an aggressive military, meaning their self-defense forces are by design more self-defense-ish. And who fills that rather significant security gap, ensuring that Japan doesn't have to worry too much about regional bullies with an appetite for islands? That's right, your friendly neighborhood superpower. There are over 50,000 US troops stationed in Japan, a not insignificant military presence that serves as a very clear, very expensive "don't even think about it" sign to potential troublemakers like North Korea, an increasingly assertive China, and even a grumpy Russia. Economically, while Japan Inc. is a global force, its prosperity is deeply intertwined with the American market. Think about it. Toyota, Sony, Nintendo, these aren't just household names. They're colossal corporations whose quarterly reports often hinge on how many Americans are buying their cars, their PlayStations, their adorable animated characters. The US isn't just a customer, it's customer, the trendsetter, the market that can make or break a product launch. Furthermore, the technological collaboration, the research partnerships, the flow of intellectual property between our two nations is immense. Sever that connection, and Japan's economic engine, while still powerful, would definitely sputter and cough, possibly emitting a small apologetic puff of smoke. So imagine a world where the US suddenly packs up its bases, recalls its troops, and says, "Sayonara, good luck." Japan would be in an immediate existential pickle. Its security framework, carefully balanced for decades, would crumble. The regional power dynamics would shift terrifyingly, forcing Japan into a desperate and incredibly expensive rearmament program, or worse, into making some very uncomfortable concessions to its neighbors. Its economy, reliant on stable trade routes protected by the US Navy and access to American consumers, would face unprecedented shocks. So, while Japan is undeniably a proud and capable nation, its current state of peace and prosperity has a very distinct American accent. Still think it's entirely independent? The evidence suggests otherwise, and it's as clear as a perfectly sculpted Zen garden. Ah, Saudi Arabia. When you hear that name, what springs to mind? Vast deserts, yes. Opulent palaces, almost certainly. And oil, oceans and oceans of black gold, enough to make a Texas oil man blush. They project an image of immense wealth, unshakable power, a kingdom built on a seemingly endless supply of the world's most vital commodity. But, and you knew there was a but coming, didn't you? Peel back that gold-plated curtain, look past the gleaming skyscrapers of Riyadh, and you'll see a complex network of dependencies with many of the strings being pulled from good old Washington, D.C. The kingdom's survival, it turns out, is more fragile than a Fabergé egg in a mosh pit. Let's start with the lifeblood of their wealth oil, and specifically, the petrodollar system. Now this is a topic so complex it could have its own miniseries, probably starring a confused Jeremy Irons. But the gist is this. For decades, oil has been predominantly traded in US dollars. This system, largely engineered and maintained by the United States, props up the dollar as the world's reserve currency and, crucially for Riyadh, underpins the immense wealth and geopolitical leverage of Saudi Arabia. Who benefits most from ensuring this system remains intact, often through rather forceful diplomatic and military means? America. And who, by extension, relies on America to keep this golden goose-laying dollar-denominated eggs? You guessed it. Without the US enforcing this global financial architecture, the Saudis would find their primary source of power significantly devalued, like finding out your prize-winning racehorse is actually 3 hamsters in a trench coat. Then there's the small matter of keeping the kingdom, well, a kingdom. The Saudi military, while lavishly funded, is heavily reliant on US weaponry, US training, and US logistical support. Those fancy fighter jets, the sophisticated missile defense systems, the high-tech surveillance gear, largely American-made and often maintained by American contractors. It's less of a partnership, and more of a very expensive subscription service for national security. Beyond the hardware, the US provides a crucial, if often controversial, security guarantee. The unspoken promise that America will step in to protect its oil-rich ally from external threats, particularly from regional rivals like Iran, is a cornerstone of Saudi foreign policy. Take away that American backstop, and suddenly the neighborhood looks a lot more dangerous for the House of Saud. And it's not just external threats. The internal stability of the kingdom, the very legitimacy of the royal family, is, to a surprising extent, linked to American support. The US has historically played a role in ensuring smooth successions and providing intelligence to counter internal dissent. A withdrawal of American backing wouldn't just embolden regional adversaries, it could also ignite simmering internal tensions, potentially leading to instability or even rebellion. So, while Saudi Arabia projects an aura of unassailable power, its foundations are deeply and perhaps precariously intertwined with American interests. Without the US, the Desert Kingdom might find itself facing not just economic collapse, but a genuine fight for its very survival. It's a relationship built on oil and dollars, but sustained by a hefty dose of American realpolitik. Chapter 4, South Korea, K-pop, kimchi, and K-dependency. Let's turn our gaze to South Korea, a nation that has performed an economic miracle so astounding, it's like watching a goldfish evolve into a technologically advanced shark in just a few decades. From the ashes of war, they've built a global powerhouse, famous for K-pop bands with more members than some small countries, dramas that will make you weep uncontrollably, and electronics so sleek they make your old phone look like a brick. Samsung, Hyundai, LG, these are titans of industry. But, and this is a but with a DMZ running right through it, this incredible success story comes with a rather significant asterisk, a very American asterisk in fact. The most glaringly obvious dependency is, of course, military. Just across the border you have North Korea, a country that's essentially a heavily armed, deeply paranoid, family-run cult with nuclear ambitions. And what stands between Seoul's glittering skyscrapers and Kim Jong-un's less than neighborly intentions? Well, among other things, over 28,000 US troops. That's right, a small American city's worth of soldiers permanently stationed on the Korean peninsula as part of the US-South Korea Mutual Defense Treaty. This treaty isn't just a piece of paper, it's a solemn promise that if the North decides to get frisky, America will respond with the kind of firepower that makes action movies look like C-SPAN. Without that US tripwire, the strategic calculus in Northeast Asia changes terrifyingly overnight. Think about it. If those American forces were to suddenly pack their bags and head home, what do you think Kim Jong-un would do? Send a strongly worded letter? Perhaps a fruit basket? Unlikely. The US presence is the ultimate deterrent, the big stick that keeps the peace, however precariously. South Korea has a capable military, no doubt, but facing the sheer numbers and asymmetrical threats from the North without direct American involvement would be a daunting, if not impossible, prospect. The survival of South Korea as a free and democratic nation has, for over 70 years, been implicitly underwritten by American military might. It's a security blanket woven from stars and stripes, and it's one they can't easily discard. And it's not just about bombs and bayonets. South Korea's economic miracle, while undeniably impressive, has also benefited immensely from its close ties with the United States. American investment played a crucial role in its post-war recovery. U.S. markets are a vital destination for Korean exports, from those ubiquitous Samsung smartphones to Hyundai cars. The technological exchange, the academic partnerships, the cultural cross-pollination, all of these have fueled South Korea's rise. Remove the US from that equation, and while South Korea wouldn't crumble overnight, its economic trajectory would certainly face significant headwinds. That sleek Seoul skyline, a testament to their hard work and ingenuity, owes more than a little to the enduring and dependent relationship with Uncle Sam. So, next time you're enjoying some KBBQ, spare a thought for the geopolitical K-dependency that helps keep it on the menu. Chapter 5. Israel, the startup nation with a superpower subscription. Alright, let's head to the Middle East, to a nation that's as controversial as it is resilient, Israel. This is a country that prides itself, and often with good reason, on its strength, its innovation. They don't call it the startup nation for nothing, and its ability to thrive in a neighborhood that's not exactly known for its welcoming committees. They've made the desert bloom, developed cutting-edge technology, and possess a military that punches well above its weight. But, and this is a but that comes with an annual multi-billion-dollar price tag, that incredible strength and resilience are significantly, undeniably, propped up by one very powerful, very generous friend, the United States of America. Let's talk numbers, because numbers, unlike political rhetoric, don't lie. Israel receives over $3.8 billion annually in military aid from the US, that's not a typo, billions, with a B, every single year. This isn't just pocket change for new uniforms, this is funding for some of the most advanced weaponry on the planet. Those Iron Dome missile defense systems that you see intercepting rockets on the news, heavily US-funded and co-developed, those cutting-edge fighter jets that give Israel air superiority, largely US-built and supplied, often the latest models off the production line. This consistent massive infusion of military assistance is, quite frankly, the bedrock of Israel's qualitative military edge in a very hostile region. And the support isn't just financial or technological, it's profoundly political. At the United Nations, the US wields its veto power like a diplomatic shield for Israel, consistently blocking resolutions critical of Israeli policies. This diplomatic cover is invaluable, allowing Israel to navigate the often treacherous waters of international opinion with a degree of impunity it simply wouldn't have otherwise. Imagine the UN Security Council without the US veto in Israel's corner. The landscape would look dramatically different and far more challenging for Israeli diplomats. This unwavering American political backing is as crucial to Israel's security as any shipment of missiles or fighter jets. So, if the US were to suddenly turn off the aid tap, or withdraw its diplomatic umbrella, what would happen? Israel would find itself in an incredibly precarious position. Militarily, it would struggle to maintain its technological superiority and the sheer volume of its defense capabilities. Politically, it would be increasingly isolated on the world stage, facing immense pressure from international bodies and neighboring states. While Israel is undoubtedly a nation of resourceful and determined people, the strategic alliance with the United States is not just a convenience, it's a fundamental lifeline. It's a dependency that underpins its very security doctrine. To deny this is to ignore the glaringly obvious reality of Middle Eastern geopolitics. Chapter 6. Ukraine, the front line fueled by freedom fries and billions. Now let's shift our focus to a country that has been tragically, brutally thrust into the global spotlight, Ukraine. For years, Ukraine existed in a sort of geopolitical limbo caught between East and West, but since Russia's full-scale invasion, its very survival has become a daily, desperate struggle. And let's be absolutely unequivocally clear, Ukraine's remarkable resistance, its ability to hold back a much larger aggressor, would look vastly, catastrophically different if the United States hadn't stepped in, and stepped in decisively. This isn't just about moral support, this is about the hard currency of war weapons, intelligence, and cold, hard cash. The sheer scale of American assistance to Ukraine is breathtaking. We're talking tens of billions of dollars in military aid alone. HIMARS rocket systems, Javelin anti-tank missiles, Patriot air defense batteries, mountains of ammunition, the list goes on and on. This isn't just surplus gear being cleared out of warehouses, this is advanced, often game-changing weaponry that has allowed Ukrainian forces to halt Russian advances, reclaim territory, and inflict significant losses on the invaders. Without this continuous massive pipeline of American arms, the Ukrainian military, however brave and determined, would be facing a far more technologically superior and numerically overwhelming foe with tragically predictable consequences. Kiev would, in all likelihood, be under Russian occupation today, but it's not just about the hardware. The US has been providing Ukraine with critical intelligence, satellite imagery, signals intelligence, real-time battlefield assessments that has given Ukrainian commanders a vital edge. Knowing where the enemy is, what they're planning, and where their weaknesses lie is invaluable in modern warfare, and much of that crucial information has American fingerprints all over it. Furthermore, the US has spearheaded the international sanctions regime against Russia, crippling its economy and isolating it on the world stage. This economic pressure, coordinated and largely driven by Washington, is a key component of the broader strategy to support Ukraine. Add to that the billions in humanitarian and financial aid to keep the Ukrainian state and economy from collapsing, and the picture of dependency becomes crystal clear. And while European allies have certainly contributed, and commendably so, let's not kid ourselves about who's carrying the heaviest load. The United States is, far and away, the single largest provider of aid to Ukraine, both in terms of sheer volume and the strategic importance of the assistance provided. If American support were to waver or heaven forbid cease, the impact on Ukraine's ability to continue its fight for survival would be immediate and devastating. Ukraine's fight isn't just happening on the battlefields of the Donbas, it's a daily, high-stakes reliance on American political willpower, industrial capacity, and taxpayer dollars. It's a stark reminder that in the brutal calculus of war, even the fiercest courage needs a superpower patron. Okay, now for a name on this list that might make you spit out your coffee or your tea or whatever beverage you're currently enjoying while contemplating the fragile nature of global superpower dynamics. China. Yes, China, the People's Republic. The emerging behemoth, the supposed challenger to American hegemony, the country that's building islands in the South China Sea faster than you can say geopolitical tension. Surely China doesn't depend on the US for anything, right? They're the workshop of the world. A communist state with a capitalist engine that's seemingly unstoppable. Well, as it turns out, even dragons get hungry, and this particular dragon has a voracious and surprisingly American appetite. Let's look at the most glaringly obvious point of leverage trade. China's economic miracle, the one that lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty and transformed it into a global superpower, was built on a mountain of exports. And who is the single biggest customer for all those made-in-China goods? Who buys container ship after container ship loaded with everything from iPhones and sneakers to furniture and power tools? That's right, it's us, the good old US of A. We purchase over $500 billion worth of Chinese goods every single year. $500 billion. That is a colossal sum of money, a fire hose of cash pouring directly into the Chinese economy, fueling its factories, employing its workers, and ironically, funding its military modernization. Now imagine if that fire hose was suddenly turned off, or even just significantly restricted. What happens to all those factories? What happens to all those jobs? What happens to the social stability that the Chinese Communist Party prizes above all else? The answer is, nothing good. A major disruption to US-China trade would send shockwaves through the Chinese economy, potentially triggering widespread unemployment, social unrest, and a severe crisis for the CCP. They need our markets. They need our consumers. For all their talk of self-reliance and dual circulation, the American consumer remains a critical pillar supporting the entire edifice of the Chinese economic model. It's a dependency they'd rather not talk about, but it's there, as big and obvious as a panda in a minimalist art gallery. And it's not just about cheap t-shirts and plastic toys. Even China's much-vaunted tech giants, companies like Huawei and ByteDance, the folks behind TikTok, your favorite source of dance crazes and questionable life hacks, are, or at least were, heavily reliant on American technology. We're talking about critical components like advanced semiconductor chips, essential software, operating systems, and access to global app stores. US sanctions and export controls have already demonstrated just how vulnerable these Chinese tech champions can be when cut off from American innovation and supply chains. So, while China presents itself as a rival, a competitor, even an adversary, the truth is far more complex. It's a relationship of intense competition, yes, but also one of profound, and for Beijing, deeply uncomfortable economic dependency. A rivalry where one side secretly needs the other to keep buying its stuff. Let's move to a country that's a geopolitical Rubik's Cube, wrapped in an enigma and occasionally on fire: Pakistan. A nation of immense strategic importance possessing nuclear weapons and unfortunately, a rather persistent problem with extremist groups operating within its borders. It's a country that has had a famously complicated, often downright schizophrenic relationship with the United States. One minute we're allies in the war on terror, the next we're accusing each other of duplicity. But through all the ups and downs, one thing has remained remarkably consistent: Pakistan's quiet and sometimes not so quiet reliance on American largesse and influence. Since 2002, in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, Pakistan has been a major recipient of U.S. aid, to the tune of over $33 billion. That's billion with a B, a figure that could probably repave every road in Pakistan and still have enough left over for a lifetime supply of mangoes. A significant chunk of this aid has been military assistance, ostensibly to help Pakistan combat terrorism and secure its volatile border with Afghanistan. But let's be honest, it's also been a way for the U.S. to maintain some semblance of influence and cooperation with a key, if often frustrating, regional player. This financial lifeline has been crucial for Pakistan's military and by extension its government, which often relies on the military for stability. Beyond the direct financial aid, there's the invaluable diplomatic and political backing that comes with being, however intermittently, in America's good graces. For a country like Pakistan facing regional rivalries, particularly with India, and often criticized on the international stage for its record on human rights or support for certain militant groups, having the U.S. in its corner or at least not actively against it, is a significant strategic asset. American influence can open doors at international financial institutions like the IMF and World Bank, crucial for a country perennially grappling with economic crises. Remove U.S. support, and Pakistan could find itself increasingly isolated, facing harsher international scrutiny, and struggling to secure the loans it needs to stay afloat. Economically, while not as overwhelmingly dependent as some others on this list, Pakistan still relies on American trade deals and significantly on remittances sent home by Pakistanis working in the United States. These remittances are a vital source of foreign exchange for the Pakistani economy. Furthermore, the overall stability that U.S. engagement, however flawed, has sometimes brought to the region indirectly benefits Pakistan's economic outlook. If the U.S. were to completely disengage, to wash its hands of this complex relationship, Pakistan could face a perfect storm of economic hardship, increased internal chaos fueled by extremism, and heightened regional tensions. It's a classic love-hate relationship, a tumultuous tango, but one where Pakistan often finds itself needing its American partner to avoid falling flat on its face. Let's sail over to Southeast Asia, to the Philippines, an archipelago of over 7,000 islands, stunning beaches, and a geopolitical headache in the form of the increasingly assertive giant next door, China. The Philippines finds itself in a rather precarious strategic location, right in the heart of the hotly contested South China Sea, a body of water that China claims almost entirely as its own personal bathtub, much to the chagrin of, well, everyone else in the region. And in this David versus Goliath scenario, the Philippines isn't standing alone, not by a long shot. They have a rather large, rather well-armed friend named Uncle Sam. The cornerstone of this relationship is the U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty, a Cold War-era pact that essentially says if one of them gets attacked, the other will come to their aid. Now, in the current geopolitical climate, with China building military bases on artificial islands and harassing Filipino fishermen, this treaty isn't just some dusty old document, it's a critical security guarantee for Manila. The U.S. has also been granted access to multiple military bases in the Philippines under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, allowing for the pre-positioning of American troops, aircraft, and vessels. This American military presence serves as a very visible deterrent to Chinese aggression, and a reassurance to the Philippines that they aren't entirely on their own. Imagine for a moment that the U.S. abrogates the treaty, packs up its access to those bases, and sails off into the sunset. What happens then? The Philippines, with its relatively modest military, would be left incredibly vulnerable to Chinese pressure, intimidation, or even outright aggression in the South China Sea. Its claims to vital fishing grounds and potential undersea resources would be significantly harder to defend. Without the American security umbrella, the Philippines becomes a much easier target for regional bullies looking to expand their influence. It's a stark reality that underpins much of Manila's foreign policy calculations, even when its leaders occasionally engage in fiery anti-American rhetoric for domestic consumption. And the dependency isn't purely military. The economic ties are also substantial. The U.S. is one of the Philippines' largest trading partners and a significant source of foreign investment. But perhaps even more crucially, consider the billions of dollars in remittances sent home every year by the vast Filipino diaspora working in the United States. These remittances are a lifeline for millions of Filipino families and a major contributor to the country's foreign exchange reserves. A sudden disruption to this flow of money, perhaps due to a souring of relations or changes in U.S. immigration policy, would have a devastating impact on the Philippine economy. So, from military protection in contested waters to essential economic support, the Philippines is tightly and necessarily bound to Washington. It's a dependency born of geography and geopolitics. Hey friends, let's head south of our border, down Mexico way. It's a country with exciting culture, amazing food, and its connection with the United States is as tricky and zesty as a spicy salsa. Mexico is right south of us. It's a country with a proud past and a very independent spirit. Or at least, that's what the travel ads want you to think. Because if you look a little closer, past the fun music bands and old ruins, you'll see they really depend on the US for money. It's so much that you might think their country's saying should be, made in Mexico, sold in America. Let's talk about how much they sell things. More than 80%, yes, that's 80% of everything Mexico sells to other countries goes right to the United States. That is a really, really big number. We are by a whole lot Mexico's biggest customer. Think about cars put together in big factories, oil taken from the Gulf, fresh fruits and veggies that fill our stores, and tiny parts for our phones and computers. Mexico's money system is totally connected to ours. If the US money system gets a little sick, Mexico doesn't just get a sniffle, it gets super sick with big money problems. When the US has money troubles, it almost always means people in Mexico lose jobs and factories slow down. And it's not just about what they sell to us, it's also about who puts money into their businesses. American companies are some of the biggest outside groups putting money into Mexico. They spend billions on factories, places for tourists, and other things. This money makes jobs, shares new ideas, and helps their money system grow. Also, all the ways goods travel back and forth across the border mean many US businesses also need parts and workers from Mexico. It's like a big connected money web. But let's be real, it's not an even partnership. Because the US buys so much, our government has a lot of say. Then there's something really important, money sent home. Millions of families in Mexico really count on the money sent back by family members working in the United States. This money sent home is one of the biggest ways Mexico gets money from other countries. Often, it's more money than they get from selling oil or from tourists. This flow of dollars from us to them is super important for their money system. It helps people buy things and makes life less hard for many folks. Any big stop to this money, maybe because of money problems in the US or tougher rules for people coming to the US, would cause big problems for Mexico's money and for how people live there. So Mexico loves its freedom and its own way of life, and that's great. But how well their money does is tied very, very closely, and maybe a bit uncomfortably to us, their big neighbor to the north. Are they totally in charge of their own money? Not really, friends. Chapter 11, United Kingdom, God Save the King, and the Special Relationship. Right then, chaps, let's hop across the pond to the United Kingdom, the land of tea, crumpets, queuing, and a rather persistent drizzle. The UK, with its grand history, its former empire on which the sun never set, though it's definitely past tea time for that empire now, and its stiff upper lip. They like to project an image of confident global influence, a plucky island nation still punching above its weight. But here's the thing, especially in a post-Brexit world, that global clout and that plucky punch are increasingly reliant on one very special, very powerful friend, the United States. The special relationship isn't just a quaint diplomatic term, it's a modern-day necessity for London. After the UK rather dramatically, and some might say calamitously, decided to leave the European Union, it found itself in urgent need of new best friends, particularly on the economic front. And who was at the top of that please trade with us list? You guessed it, America. The US is one of the UK's largest trading partners, and securing a comprehensive trade deal with Washington became a top priority for successive British governments post-Brexit. While that deal has proven elusive, the underlying economic dependency remains. American investment in the UK is substantial, and access to US markets is crucial for many British industries, from finance in the City of London to high-tech manufacturing. Without robust economic ties to the US, Britain's post-Brexit future looks considerably bleaker. Then there's the small matter of defense and intelligence. The UK still maintains a capable military, but its global reach and effectiveness are significantly amplified by its close cooperation with the United States. Think about NATO, where the US is the undisputed heavyweight champion, and the UK is a key but ultimately junior partner. More critically, there's the Five Eyes Intelligence Sharing Alliance, a shadowy cabal of English-speaking nations, US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, who essentially spy on the world together and share the juicy bits. For the UK, access to America's vast intelligence apparatus is an invaluable asset, giving it insights and capabilities it simply couldn't achieve on its own. This intelligence lifeline is fundamental to British national security. And let's be frank, on the global stage, the UK's diplomatic influence is often magnified when it aligns with Washington. When Britain wants to project power or take a stand on international issues, having the US by its side lends significant weight to its pronouncements. Lose that American support, that special relationship warmth, and London suddenly finds its voice a little quieter, its influence a little diminished. So, while the UK might still dream of ruling the waves, the reality is that in the 21st century, its security, its economic prosperity, and its global standing are increasingly dependent on the prevailing winds from across the Atlantic. So much for splendid isolation, eh, Britannia? Chapter 12. Germany, the economic engine running on American fuel and security. And finally we arrive in the heart of Europe, at the continent's economic engine, Germany. Wunderbar. A country renowned for its engineering prowess, its punctuality, its beer, and its remarkable ability to produce incredibly sensible yet slightly boring cars. Germany is, by many measures, a global powerhouse, the de facto leader of the European Union, a nation that projects stability and prosperity. But as the recent unpleasantness in Ukraine has brutally exposed, even the mighty German Panzer relies on a surprising amount of American fuel, both literally and metaphorically, especially when it comes to keeping the lights on and the neighborhoods safe. For decades, Germany, like much of Western Europe, outsourced a significant portion of its security concerns to the United States via NATO. While maintaining its own Bundeswehr, Germany benefited immensely from the American military presence on its soil and the broader U.S. security guarantee that deterred Soviet and now Russian ambitions. The war in Ukraine served as a colossal wake-up call, revealing just how fragile Germany's own defense posture had become and how reliant it was on American leadership and military might to counter Russian aggression. Suddenly, those U.S. troops stationed in Germany didn't look like an anachronism from the Cold War. They looked like a very necessary insurance policy. Economically, while Germany is an export champion, its energy security, a critical component of its industrial strength, has also been shown to be vulnerable. Its previous reliance on cheap Russian gas proved to be a strategic blunder of epic proportions. And who stepped in to help fill the energy gap, providing crucial liquefied natural gas, LNG, exports to keep German factories running and homes heated? The United States, among others. This shift highlights a new dimension of dependency, American energy resources becoming vital for Europe's largest economy. Furthermore, the U.S. market remains a key destination for German exports, from BMWs and Mercedes-Benz cars to Siemens industrial equipment. A healthy American economy is good news for German order books. And let's not forget the political dimension. While Germany often champions a more independent European foreign policy, the reality is that on major global issues, particularly those involving security or confronting major powers like Russia or China, Berlin's ability to act decisively is often contingent on coordination with and backing from Washington. The U.S. still sets much of the agenda within NATO and other international forums. Remove the U.S. from the equation, its military presence, its energy supplies, its political leadership, and Germany, despite its economic strength, suddenly feels a lot more exposed, a lot closer to Moscow, and a lot less confident about navigating a turbulent world. So, while Germany may run Europe, it often does so with a subtle but unmistakable American hand on the steering wheel. The cold truth: who really runs the world? So, there you have it. 12 countries, some of them global giants, all of them in one way or another, surprisingly and perhaps uncomfortably, tethered to the United States. Many of these nations talk a good game about independence, about sovereignty, about forging their own path. And good for them, aspiration is important. But what we've exposed here, what the cold, hard facts demonstrate, is one undeniable thing. Without the US, their economies could very well crash, their borders might become terrifyingly porous, and their leaders would likely be in a state of unmitigated panic. It's not a comfortable truth, but it's the truth nonetheless. Some of these dependencies are overtly military, a reliance on American firepower and security guarantees. Others are deeply economic, an addiction to American markets, investment, or crucial resources. And for some, let's be honest, it's even psychological. A decades-long habit of looking to Washington for leadership, or at least for a convenient scapegoat. America isn't just a country, it's become a kind of global infrastructure, a system that, for better or worse, many nations have built their own stability upon. And as much as people around the world, and even some within the US, love to criticize, complain about, and generally hate on America, the uncomfortable reality is that many nations simply can't live without it. At least not yet. What do you think? Did this list surprise you? Were you shocked to see economic powerhouses like China and Germany, or close allies like Canada and the UK on it? Do you agree that these nations are in various ways secretly dependent on US power, or do you think we've overstated the case? We genuinely want to hear from every corner of the world, so drop your thoughts, your agreements, your furious disagreements in the comments below. Let the debate begin, and please, try to keep it civil, or at least amusingly uncivil. Don't forget to like this video if it made you think, subscribe to Voyage Pulse for more uncomfortable truths, and definitely turn on those notifications so you don't miss our next expose. Until next time, this is Voyage Pulse, exposing the truth they really don't want you to see. Over and out.